Welcome to I'm releasing ALBuild as open source. Hey, I'm Eric, and you might have seen on the channel, if you're a subscriber, that I have been using some sort of tool whenever I needed to build an app. And what do I mean by build an app? Well, I mean that whenever I need to produce an app file that needs to go somewhere, or an app file that goes somewhere by itself, so to speak, more than just just compile for testing and goofing around. And there's lots of different ways of doing this. Microsoft just introduced the ALGo thing on GitHub. Waldo has the ALOps, and there's probably more that I haven't even heard about. Anyway, when a long time ago, when I started transitioning into AL, I kind of took some of the tools I had for CAL and transformed that into something I could use on AL, and well, it slowly evolved. And then a while back I said, okay, let me actually take all the different pieces together and see if I can make it sort of coherent, make a thing that's that covers all my needs. So far this has been a tool that is used by myself. This is used by eFocus and Hogarth, but nowhere else. And I was kind of going back and forth of what to do with this tool. Should I retire the tool and replace it with either ALOps or with what Microsoft is doing on GitHub, and I kind of like what I've created, to be honest. And so I thought, okay, let's clean it up a bit more and then release it as open source. So maybe this is interesting to some of you guys, maybe it's not, but now it's available, and it's released under the MIT license, so you can just go ahead and use all of it, use part of it, incorporate it into your own tool chain, whatever. But before we get to that, let me actually show you what it is. So a quick reminder, and I think I'm gonna start, let's start here on GitHub. So there's a repo under Hogarth called ALBuild-open source. The reason is that's -open source is because the old version of this, the non-open source version, is still on GitHub and as a private repo, and it contains stuff that is not suitable necessarily for a public repo. Anyway, I have tried to create a small overview of what it actually is, but let's get back to that. Let me show you what it is. So here's the command prompt, and first and foremost, ALBuild is a command line tool. So whenever you are, if you're like me, who just fires off command line commands and then live ever happily ever after, or you're triggering this from a build agent or a webhook or whatever it is, you can basically do anything like that. But the way it's normally done is that I'll call a build command, and then tons of stuff happens very quickly. And I think this is actually one of the points about this. In this case, I have just taken the point of sale app from the YouTube stuff, and it builds in less than 12 seconds, which is pretty nice. But what is it actually doing? Let me show you. So if you saw that I called a build CMD file. So we can go in here and see that this is the build CMD file, and it's basically a one-liner. I'm just doing the echo off because that's how I roll. So I call ALBuild.exe and right now this is the folder I have installed the executable in for the purpose of recording this video. And I'm passing one command to it, pos.json. I could actually pass another command saying dash offline, and we'll get back to that in a second or two. Anyway, we're passing a parameter which is the name of a JSON file, and that happens to be the JSON file I have right here. So this JSON file contains the instructions of what to do. So if we go back to the command line here, we can see that tons of stuff happened, and then it says completed successful, completed successful, completed successful. So it started by saying deploy basic Docker, then git, then update version, then remember, then download symbols, then compile, and you can see there's kind of a title, and then completed successful, and stuff happens in between there. So let's take a quick look at what's actually happening in this one. The first one is a deploy basic Docker command. In this case, it deploys a test runner app that's part of this. So a simple app that enables us to run a test code unit from in here. In this case, whenever it says deploy basic Docker, means that it's basic authentication against a Docker image. So we need a base URL for the Docker and username and password, and a schema update mode. Of course, this can be used to deploy the app you have been building, or deploy library apps, or whatever is needed. This is just a generic deploy an app function. It has a friend, which is deploy SaaS, that uses OAuth instead. Anyway, so whenever, and we're actually not using it, and there's no tests in this app, so I don't know why I still have this here. I have. The next is a git command. So type git, the command is pull. So ALBuild figures out where's git located on your machine. So as long as you have git installed on your machine, ALBuild will find it, and then it will execute the command. We can see here, if we go back to this, that the output between the name of the command and completed successful is actually the output from git. So what you get in between here is the output from the task. In this case, it says ALBuild test run, and then it actually is unprocessable entity, means that it's already installed. So we accept that as a successful run. But in case of git, we're passing the command we're giving here to git, and then we are showing you all the output you get from git. So in this case, before we build that, we get the latest version out of git. Now and this is actually, let's see if we can format this just a tiny bit nicer. So this command is called update version. So update version takes we'll go in and look at the app.json file and update the version number in that one. In this case, we give it an app path and tell the system where is the app, app.json file located, version part to increment. So in this case, we want whenever we have a 1.000, we have a version that looks like this. So this is part 1, 2, 3, 4. So in this case, we want to increment version part 4. We want to increment with 1, and I have also told that we like date in version part number 3. So I would like the date to be shown as this one. You can not do that, and then you just get the version updated. Now comes the next thing that does is the remember function, and the remember function is it's kind of fun. So remember, you give remember function a path, and what it will do it will do two things. One, it will remember this path and say, okay, this is app path, but it will also read the JSON file that exists in this location, and all the content of the JSON files will become commands that can be used, or parameters that can be used in here. So I'll show you just in a second. The next thing that happened, man, this JSON is really badly formatted. I should have done something about that before starting the video. Okay. Anyway, so now we get a download symbols Docker. So in this case, we will ask it to download the symbols for this app from a Docker instance. So we give it a Docker URL and username and password, because that's the way we talk to Docker, at least. And we tell it that the app path should be %apppath%, meaning that whatever we remembered, this is where we're going to work. So now it will download the symbols of, so depending on, there's different approaches to symbols. I'm actually in the school of not doing this normally, because I want to, so both at Hogarth and eFocus, we tag our apps to a specific version and saying this should be compatible with a specific version. So in order not to get symbols pollution and stuff like that, we try to keep the symbols of the oldest version that we support. Anyway, but your mileage may vary, and you can download symbols if you need to. So the next step is, I'm just formatting JSON on the way here. Next step is to compile. This, of course, will require that you have the AL compiler installed on your machine in VS Code. But it will go search for it and find where it's located. And the only parameters I use right here, right now, is the app path. I think there are more parameters here, or there should be at least, so we can tell the compiler some things, but in just giving it the path is actually enough to do a normal compile. And we can see, if we follow along here, that we remembered this JSON, and we downloaded base app, system app, application, and system. There were no in this app, there were no dependencies, or there are no dependencies to download, but we could. If we had symbols coming from somewhere else, there's also a command in ALBuild to copy the symbols from somewhere else. But now you can see the next step here is compile. So it calls the compiler, version 9.2. You get a warning because this is outdated code, so it says show my code, and we got some warning about implicit user width and so on. So again, the output between the command and complete successful is the output of this whatever task this is. The next task in this case is translate. So now we are asked to translate the app, and we actually in this case give it a path to an XLF file, which is sitting in our app path in the translations folder and is called the name. %name% is the name from the app.json file .g.xlf. So if we scroll down, then we can see that it's opening a local translation database. We are giving it an XLF as input. We're also connecting to Azure for a remote access to other translations. And then it's translating. In this case, because I have already run this a couple of times, we can see that there are 37 texts to translate in this app. We did not have to pull any from the cloud. We did not have to call the Azure Cognitive Service to translate any of these. So the way the translation thing works is that if we have the translation in our local database, we will just use that translation that we already have sitting in the database, meaning that it's ultra fast. We have the translation available. We don't need to go anywhere. If we do not have the translation available and we have access in the setup to an Azure table storage, and the text happens to be translated there. So let's say you have multiple build machines and this machine A builds something new, and that one will then, because this is totally unknown thing, it will call out to the Azure Cognitive Service and ask to translate. So whatever has been stored will be stored in that machine's local database. It will also be pushed to the cloud. So when machine B is trying to translate the same thing and do not have that in its database, it will look in the cloud and find the translation from machine A, to avoid the slowness and the potentially costly overhead of calling the translation service. So ideally, you should never have to translate a specific text more than once. So when this is done, it will write all new XLF files into the translation folder, and we can go back, and then we're done with translation. Now that we have translated our app, we need to compile it once again. So in reality, the only thing the first compile did was make sure we got a translation file that is up to date with everything that's needed. So the second compile, that is our compile. Now I do not have in this one, but a typical step after this will be to sign the app file. If you have a code sign certificate, this is needed in order to deploy to app source. So there's also a sign command. I have not added that here. So after the second compile, let's see, we can follow along and see it's just compiling again. Then there is a copy command. So the copy command is very simple. We would like to copy a file. In this case, we would like to copy a file in the app path folder called publisher_name_version.app, which is how Microsoft are naming the app file. So again, using all the way back from the remember function that remembers the content of the JSON.app. We use that to just, this is just a generic, this will copy the outputted app file. And in this case, I want to copy this to a release folder, or you might want to copy to a OneDrive or something like that. I was working on an FTP task here, but did not complete that in time for the release, so that might come later if people want that. And now the last three commands here are Git commands. So we will add all the stuff that we have created here. We will commit it, and we will tell that this is ALBuild version, and then we take the version number out of the JSON app again, app.json. And the last thing after the commit is that we do a push. So all this is what's happening here. So in those typically under 12 seconds. It's probably longer when I have to look at it. Let's see how it goes. Just over 12. Anyway. What we also have is So this is the, let me show you what's in here. Oh, it's already there. Let me make this big enough so even old folks like me can see it. So we have been using the ALBuild.exe. You can see that's a pretty big exe file because it's kind of built with to be self-contained, so it's easy to, it might be big, but then you don't have to install the .NET framework and all that good stuff in order to run it. There is a separate app called the BC Translate app, and it'll probably be just as big in the released version. This one is just the translation part isolated. So if you just want to translate an app, then this is that app. Sign tool is the what are they called? DigiCert, I think. It's the tool that we use to sign with. And the last one is the Translate admin, which is started on a different screen. It's a little Windows program. This one need some more love. So the idea here is that it can do, you can search for a specific thing. If you add an asterisk before, you search for a partial thing. So this one says, and for this app, apparently I have decided that I want to translate this into Australian English. I want to translate into Austrian German and Belgium, Dutch, Belgium, something. I cannot speak Dutch. Sie können den Artikel von diesen Bildschirm ausscannen, something about scanning in German, yeah. And these are an output of the Cognitive service, and I can go and say, hang on. In the Australian thing, I needs to say, hey mate, you can. Oh, sorry, that's the source. Hey mate, just to be really stereotypic. You can change that. This is now the Australian translation. So you can maintain your translations, and they are saved in your local DB, and they're also sent to the cloud version. So changes will can move around. And of course, if you want to refresh another local from cloud, you just delete the local database. This app has two more tricks down up its sleeve, I guess. One is you can give it a XLF file to import to learn translations, which is pretty cool. You can also actually rip artifacts. Let's open out another screen. So I'm just going to start this and then I'm going to kill it because this takes hours. So I could say that I want 20.2 and I want that for Danish. So what will happen now when I say import is that this one uses the same artifacts as the BC container helper does. So now it found a 20.2.41144.boot-dk. So now it's going to download that one and then extracts all the apps that are in that zip file. Then it's going to extract all the translations that are in those apps, and then it's going to import those translations both to your local DB and to your cloud database. The idea behind this is to reuse translation. So if you're in your app, you create a field called customer number. No reason to ask somebody to translate that because Microsoft already translated that into all the languages. And Microsoft's translation might be good or bad or whatever, but it's the way that string will be translated in the rest of the application anyway. So you're just reusing, standing on the shoulders of all the great translation work that Microsoft has done. So and you can do this for all languages. It will take a lot of time, and I did build a translation database of, it was several gigabytes, I think. Actually, let me see if I can. Let's see, projects, translation, DB. There, it's almost a gigabyte for the one that has about everything in it. Anyway, I'm gonna kill this thing. So that's the translation admin interface. Let's see if there's anything I missed. So we talked about the ALBuild and the translation, standalone translation. So the way it works behind the scene is that there's a .config file that goes with all these, one for each actually. And in the .config file, you can specify an Azure key. That is the key for a Azure translation cognitive services. And you have a name in here, and that name should, because when you have a translation, you actually get a, let me show if I go back to translate admin, open this again, I just search for temp, that should also give something. We can see somewhere it actually tells you what app did the translation. Maybe we cannot see this here. Huh. Then the path of the translation database, what languages you are going to support, and you see here's an example of tons of languages. In the one I have been using for this video, there were just 3 languages. Then you can specify a Azure storage account and storage key to use for that. Or if you don't want all the cloud fancy translation, but you just wanna keep it simple, that's why you can pass the offline thing here and say, hey, don't do all the fancy stuff. If you can't translate it, too bad. If you have the translation in the local database, use it. So options, I guess. And where do you find this? Well, you find it on Hogard GitHub. You can also do hogard.com/ALBuild, and I'm gonna slowly build some more documentation for this. In the and you can download executables also from the releases on GitHub. Where this is lacking most documentation right now, and I will create something, is on how to build this thing. What parameters are there? In the source, there's on the ALBuild, there's an example folder with some examples, some more complicated. I actually took this out of the toolbox, which I think also uses SAS, so you can see that deploy SAS, and it does testing and tons of stuff. So that's a good example, but I will build some more documentation for all these. Anyway, if this is interesting, try it out, and it might blow up, because I've kind of tried to clean it up, but I may have broken more stuff that I have fixed in the cleanup. So comments below, hit me up on Twitter, create issues on GitHub. If you find anything wrong with it, even better, fix it yourself and send me a pull request. I want to show you one more thing. bonus contents. We're passing a 30-minute mark in a second here. I want to show you one thing. So I have tried to keep this because it's just something I did for myself. Did I just show something on screen that I didn't show you guys? Oh crap. Anyway, I was in here showing the examples. What I wanted to show you is in the source code, ALBuild under tasks. So each of these are kind of a task. So if we look at the Git task, for example, 76 lines. So it's not big at all. It's mainly a way of passing something into a process and calling Git. So there's probably that we cannot find Git on this machine, but get full path of git.exe and so on. So each task is kind of its own little class. There's not even inheritment. It's very simple from that aspect, and the task gets called in a nice little case statement here, and that's it. So it's quite easy to extend with new stuff. So yeah, try it out. Let me know what you think. I'm not saying there's a replacement for anything. On the contrary, this is just a tool I've been using, and maybe it works for you. That's lovely. So if you're not ready to play with ALBuild right now, check out this video, because that's another. Man, I'm not able to point today. Wow. See you there. Bye.